So you're saying to yourself, why do I need to have someone take photos of me if my cell phone has a camera on it? Most cell phones have cameras that are upwards of 50 megapixels. Now, that would lead you to believe that you're going to get an incredible amount of detail and fantastic photos. Now, don't get me wrong. You can take some great photos with your phone. But there's a reason why professionals use full frame cameras, like the one that I'm filming on right now. And whether or not you choose to believe this, fellas, size does matter. Now, what am I speaking of? No, it's not a phallic reference. Calm down. Really, what it comes down to is the camera's sensor size. On a full frame sensor, it's a 35 millimeter sensor. So when you're talking about that sensor versus the sensor on your phone, it's much, much larger, enabling it to collect far more light. Now, how does that work? Well, light enters the camera, goes through the lens, and depending on the aperture, decides how much light to let in. That light then hits your sensor, and the photons of light are absorbed by photocytes. Now, photocytes are all over that sensor, and they're infinitely tiny, micrometers size, micron. So we're talking less than the width of a human hair, like by a significant margin. It interprets the intensity and the amount of light, sends that also through a red, blue, and green filter, sends that to a processor, and then that in turn spits out an image. Now, this camera is a 24.2 megapixel camera. So you're thinking, well, then obviously a 50 megapixel phone camera will give me much better pictures, but that's just simply not the case. You need to have ideal lighting no matter what you're trying to photograph or what camera you really have. And a cell phone is extremely limited in that because the size of the sensor is up to 30 times smaller than the sensor in a full frame camera, like the Canon R8 that I'm using right now. Now, what does that really mean? Well, it means its ability to collect light and interpret that data is severely limited. Because ultimately what's going on is it's collecting data. And now a lot of modern phones utilize a lot of AI and a lot of, computerized tricks to simulate a lot of the things that might come from more data. Now, the problem being is that oftentimes you're sacrificing the ultimate quality that you can get from that photo. For instance, if you have a 50 megapixel camera, the photocytes on that lens, on that filter, the sensor, which they're all basically semiconductors, but the photocytes on that sensor have to be so small to fit onto that sensor. Because when you are talking about in terms of megapixels, what you're talking about is the amount of photocytes that are on a sensor. So on this sensor, there are over 24 million photocytes coming up with a 24 megapixel camera. So there's 50 million on a much smaller sensor. So when this happens, there's something known as binning. And basically what that does is it allows each photocyte to utilize the surface area of the photocytes around it, effectively turning a 50 megapixel camera into a 12.5 megapixel camera. So it's going to struggle in lower light situations that you might typically find yourself in. So what is going to happen is oftentimes it will compensate by increasing the voltage gain to the sensor. Now what this does is it makes it more sensitive to light. And you would think that's just, hey, no problem, that's great, why wouldn't they always do that? The problem with that being is the same problem that you have when you're talking about something like a stethoscope. It's extremely sensitive to sound. And it's meant to hear things that are incredibly, incredibly quiet, like your heartbeat. But if you tap on it, it's ear-bleedingly loud. And that's the same principle that happens just like whenever you record something on your phone at a concert, the sound is muffled. It's too much for the system to handle. So it imparts graininess and what you would consider digital noise to the photo. And not just that, a full frame camera is going to have more of a dynamic range, meaning the difference between the darkest parts of a photo and the lightest part of an image is going to be greater. So you're going to add more depth and you're going to get a better feel for what you're looking at, and it's just going to be a better look overall. A cell phone is quick, it's convenient, it's easy, but you're never going to get the same look as you will from a full frame camera in the hands of somebody that knows how to use it. So if you want to see what that's all about, hit like, subscribe. I'm going to continue to tell you about that. Follow me on Instagram. Go to fbimaging.com, book a free consultation, portrait session. I can show you what I can do for you and set something up. Thank you again. I'll put links in the description. Have a great day.